Okay, good morning. Yeah, so are there any questions? Yeah, before we get started, I hope all of you have finished the assignment 6 of the lab course. Please do submit it by today. I think 11:59 p.m. is the deadline. And the first three lab assignments have been more or less completely evaluated. We'll release the marks sometime during this week. We're just going through the process of cross-checking them. And I think the TA has sent an email asking those who have not put their team details on the grade scope, they need to do that. So please do that, then only you'll be able to see the marks. Okay, once we release the marks. So please do that today itself, right? So that if we release the marks sometime today or tomorrow, right, you'll be able to see your marks. Okay. And we'll also kind of release the guidelines that have been followed to evaluate the assignments. The guidelines may be slightly different for each of the assignments because the number of exercises is different. And also the marks given for each of the assignments as of now, they may be different, but we'll scale it to some uniform marks no, for all the assignments. Okay, that will finally be the weightage given to each of the assignments. Okay, right. So if there are no questions, let's continue with the discussion that we've been having. So in the last few classes, we looked at these circuits called the sequential circuits, which are mainly built using the flip-flops, which are the basic circuit elements. And last couple of classes, we've seen how to design a sequential circuit using the flip-flops. Typically, we'll be interested in designing the circuits like counters. And at the end of the last class, we're looking at even how to analyze the given sequential circuit. Basically, we want to know what is the sequence of states a given sequential circuits will go through given the initial state. And for different initial states, you may get different sequences. And all of that can be put together in the form of a state transition diagram, right? That describes the behavior of the sequential circuit, right? So that's how one can design a sequential circuit or analyze the behavior of a sequential circuit, right? And what all we need to know is the operations of the flip-flops and the excitation tables of the flip-flops in order to perform this design and analysis of the sequential circuits. And in most of the applications that we are interested in the computer system design, we will be requiring mostly the counter type circuits. And one more type of circuits we'll be quickly seeing today are what are called the resistors. Okay, we'll come to that quickly. But in general, these flip-flops can be used to design any sequential circuit for some other applications as well. Okay, but the methodology is similar. Okay, if there are no questions, let's go ahead with the discussion on the next topic on the sequential circuits. Basically, we'll be looking at how to build what are called the storage elements in the computer system. And one of the commonly used type of storage element within the CPU is what are called the registers. And we'll be quickly seeing in the next few classes. Sorry. how these registers are used, right, in the execution of program in a typical computer system. Right now, we'll look at the functionality of this register and how these registers can be built using the flip-flops. And later, we'll be seeing how to make use of these registers in the execution of the higher level language programs in a computer system. Okay. So typically, this register consists of a number of flip-flops where each flip-flop can be used to store one bit of data, right? And typically, if I say it's an n-bit register, there will be n flip-flops.
Sir, we can't see a screen.
Oh, is there some problem? Let me just check. Oh, got switched off. Sorry. Yeah, now it's coming up. Okay. Yeah. So whenever we say there is an n-bit register, we'll be quickly seeing that one can build a register using the n flip-flops. And typically, we'll have multiple such registers put together called as the register file. It has got nothing to do with the files that we are normally familiar with in a computer system, right? So here, the register file refers to a set of registers. Okay. And typically, we are interested in accessing one of the register's contents, or we want to write some data into one of the registers. So these are the typically the operations that we need to perform, right? And one can build these registers using different types of flip-flops, but as we'll be quickly saying, right, it's much more convenient to do that using the D-type flip-flops. So let's look at a simple 4-bit register. Okay, which can be built using 4 D-type flip-flops. Okay, so each of them will have the D input and the Q output. We'll not worry about the Q bar output here because we are not interested in that. So let's indicate which bit each of these flip-flops is referring to. Okay, and each of these will have the control signal. And because we are talking about a synchronous sequential circuit, right? So all these flip-flops will be connected together. Right? So now you see that we have just put together 4 flip-flops together, and all of them are connected through the common control signal here. And now, what are the 2 operations that we are interested in doing on this register? Typically, we are interested in writing data into the register. Okay, and the other operation we are interested in is reading the data that's already stored in the register. So this will be called as the read operation, reading the data from a register, right? So how do you perform the writing of data into the register? What all we need to do? Let's say if I want to write 0110 into the register, right? So we have set D3 to 0, D2 to 1, D1 to 1, and D0 to 0. And then we enable the control signal. What do you mean by enabling the control signal? We'll simply make that as 1, right? And whenever the control signal is 1, right, then it's basically we're assuming that it's a level triggered flip-flop, but one can discuss the same thing in the context of the edge triggered flip-flops. Then we have to generate a rising edge, right, for a positive edge triggered flip-flop. But it's easier to understand, right, using the level triggered flip-flop. So whenever you want to enable, we'll make this C signal as 1. So once the C signal is made 1, then whatever is the data that's applied to the inputs of the flip-flops will be stored into the flip-flops, in the sense that the state of those flip-flops will change accordingly, right? Because once I apply D3 equal to 0, then Q3 will become 0. And if D2 is set to 1, Q2 will become 1. If D1 is set to 1, Q1 will become 1, and so on, right? So what all we need to do is, we have to specify what is the data to be returned to the register, and then you have to simply enable the control signal, right? So this is the write operation. What is the read operation in this case? Actually, where is the data available? That's stored in the register here. The data is available in the values of Q3, Q2, Q1, and Q0, right? So basically, we have to just take what are the bits that are available at the outputs of each of the flip-flops, right? So the read operation is basically looking at what is the bit that's stored in each of the registers. So basically, you have to tap the Q outputs of all the flip-flops, right? Then it gives us the data that is available in the register, right? Actually, we don't even have to enable the C here, because there's no need for the control signal operation, right, in the read. So whenever we are interested in reading the content of the register, we have to just look at what is the Q outputs of each of the flip-flops. Okay. Now, can we extend it for any value of n? That is, if I want a 8-bit register, or 16-bit register, 32-bit register, or 64-bit register, right? It's only the number of flip-flops that will be different. Otherwise, the structure will be similar and the operations are going to be similar. Okay. Now, let us look at how to construct a register file. Let's look at, maybe just for the sake of discussion, I want to have a register file with 8 registers, and all these registers are 4-bit registers, right? So let's call these registers as R7, R0, sorry, R6, so on, R1 and R0, right? Now I want to put all these 8 registers together in a single entity called the register file. Now, what are the operations that I want to do here? I want to perform either the read operation or the write operation on one of these registers, right? So let's say we have 2 control signals, read control signal and write control signal. Okay. And if it is the write control signal, I have to say what is the data that we are going to write into one of these registers, right? So that data will be of 4 bits width, because we're talking about 4-bit registers. So this is called the data in. Okay. And at any point of time, you may want to read only one of these registers contents, or you may want to write in one of these registers. So that has to be specified by what is called the address of the register. All right. So when you have 8 registers, how many bits are required to specify the registers? One of the registers, right? We require 3 bits, right? So basically, there is an address input here which specifies from which register I want to perform the read or write operation. Then whether read operation is to be carried out or write operation is to be carried out is specified by the corresponding control signals. So if the read operation is to be carried out, we'll make a read equal to 1. Otherwise, we'll make a write equal to 1. Okay. Otherwise, both of them will be 0. And whenever we want to perform a write operation, we have to specify what is the data that is going to be written to that register. That's called the data in inputs. That's 4 bits, because each of the registers is of width 4, right? And when you perform the read operation, the contents of one of the registers will be taken out and then made available at the output of the register file, right? That's called the data out, right? So that's also going to be a 4-bit data line. Okay. Yeah. Now each of these registers R0, R1, and so on, R7 will be built using 4 flip-flops. So totally there will be so many number of flip-flops, right? But we identify each set of 4 flip-flops with one register. Okay. So what is the internal logic in this register file now, which can perform these operations? Yeah. In addition to these registers, what is the other logic that's required to perform these read and write operations? Let's look at first the write operation. So what is it we want to do in the write operation? We specify the register into which we want to write this data, and then the data has to be written to that particular register. All right. Yeah. And in the case of the read operation, we only specify the register address, then the output of the register file should correspond to the content of the flops in that register. Okay. So what is the internal logic to build this register file? You're all familiar with the circuits that need to be used to build this register file. I just want you to tell me what are the circuits that we looked at earlier that need to be used in order to build this register file. So in addition to these registers, what are the other components that should be there within this register file? Yeah. Any? Mux and demux? Good. Yeah. Is that enough? Okay, where do you want to use mux and where do you want to use demux? Good. So mux is in the read operation, demux is in the write operation. Very good. Yeah. Okay, let's see now. What will be the specifications of mux and demux now? So let's just write a brief block diagram here. So this is R0, R1, so on, R7, right? So if I want to perform a read operation, it is said that we can use a mux. Right? What will be the specification of this mux? Yeah. What will be the inputs to this mux? The contents of each of the registers. Right? So we take the outputs of four flip-flops in each of the registers, right? So that will form the inputs, right? So now this will be the 0th input, 1 input, and the input 7. So there should be a select lines. So how many select lines should be there? There should be 3 select lines, right? And the output of the mux will be the data outline. Right? So what is the specification of this mux now? It is 4-bit 8 to 1 multiplexer. Right? Because there are 8 sources and width of data is 4 bits, right? And by using the 4-bit 8 to 1 mux, right, I can perform this operation. What will go into select lines? Obviously, we are going to select one of the registers from which the read operation is to be carried out. That's specified by the register address. Right? Now, if I give the register address as 000, then the contents of R0 will be made available as the output of the multiplexer. If it is, let's say, 100, then the contents of R4 will be available at the output of the multiplexer. Right? And basically, you have to enable all these operations only when the read operation to be carried out. Right? So typically, there can be enable signal in the multiplexer, right, which is controlled by the read operation. Only when the read operation is active, that is when the read operation is to be done, this signal will be 1, and only when this enable signal is 1, the mux output will be available. I'm not going to details of what happens when the enable is 0. Basically, there will not be any output on the data out lines. It will be electrically isolated. We'll not worry about the details of how to implement that. So this is what is called a the read port of a register file. What does the read port do? It takes the register address, it takes the read command, right, and then takes the contents of that particular register and make it available as the output of the port, right? And by using the read port, we can perform the read operation from one of the registers in the register file. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you another question. Is it possible to read the content of more than one register simultaneously? Okay. I want you to get the question clear, right? If somebody is interested, can one read the content of multiple registers simultaneously? Let's say I want to read the contents of 2 different registers simultaneously. Actually, one can also read content of same register twice, but that may be of interest later. We'll worry about that later, right? Let's say I want to read the contents of register 0 and register 4, right? But I want to do it simultaneously. Okay. What can be done in that case? So obviously, I have to give register address as 0 for one read operation and register address as 4, that is 100, for the other read operation. But how do we enable simultaneous reading of 2 registers? Yeah, basically we're asking the question whether we can have a register file with 2 read ports. What will the block diagram of that looking like? So I'm talking about a register file okay. There is what's called a read port here. One and read port 2, right? What are the inputs to a particular read port? It is the register address, right? So this will have a register address and it will have the data output, and this will have another register address and it will have data lines. Maybe just write it clearly. Okay, so let me just integrate it by port 1 and port 2, right? So here it is register address 1, right? And here it will be register address 2. So data from the port 1 will be available here, and data from port 2 will be available here. So this will be 3 bits. This will also be 3 bits, right? And this will be 4 bits, and this will be 4 bits, right? So can we give 0 as the register address 1 and 4 as the register address 2? Then get the content of register 0 on the data 1 lines and content of register 4 on the data 2 lines from the respective ports. Yeah. Will there be any difficulty in supporting this? So what we are talking about is duplicating the logic for the port. What do you mean by that? We'll have 2 multiplexers, right? So one multiplexer will take the register address 1, and then it'll get the corresponding registers contents as the output of that multiplexer. And there'll be another port, right, which is the another multiplexer of the same configuration. It will take the register 2 address, and then the content of that register will be made available on the data lines of the multiplexer or the output lines of the multiplexer, right? So we see that one can have a register file with more than one read port. Basically, there'll be so many number of multiplexers, right? And at a later point, we'll be seeing maybe in the next course, right? Why we need register files with multiple ports. First of all, the number of registers in the register file will be very large. Typically, it can be anywhere between 32 to 64. And we'll be interested in reading the contents of multiple registers in the register file simultaneously, right? So that we can perform different operations in the execution of the program. Okay, I hope that's clear, right? So in principle, one can have multiple read ports, right? But typically what is used in practice in many of the processors is a register file with at least 2 read ports, right? Some processors may support even 4 ports for the register file read operations. Okay, now let's look into how we can perform the write operation. So it's already said that one can use the demultiplexer to perform the write operation. How do we use the demultiplexer here to perform the write operation? So this is the demux. It will have 4 data lines. That's the data in, right? So there should be 7 destinations. Sorry, 8 destinations. Right? And what will be selected lines here? It will be the register address. Sorry. So what is the specification of this mux now? Yeah, it's again 4-bit 1 to 8 demux. Right? Where will this outputs of demultiplexer be connected to? They will be connected to the D inputs of the flip flops. Or just 1 minute. There is some minor problem. This tab has gone into some unexpected operation. Let me just wait for that. I'm not able to cancel that. Okay. Okay. So we see that the specification mux is nothing but a 4-bit 1 to 8 demux, right? And the input lines to the register are nothing but the input lines of the flip-flops, that the data lines of the inputs of the flip-flops, right? Yeah. So now this will be called as a write port, but will that be enough? Can I just take the data in lines and then pass it through the demultiplexer, and then it will go to one of the registers in the register file, and that register is selected by the register address. Yeah, what else needs to be done in order to perform the write operation? It's not enough if I just give the data to the flip-flops. When will the write operation into the flip-flops be carried out? Yeah, please remember that at any point of time, we are writing the data into only one of the registers, right? Yeah. So how do you select only that register for the write operation? Now from the structure of the demultiplexer, you know, right? What will be the outputs of the demultiplexer to the destinations which are not selected? Right? Yeah. I mean, if you remember, the structure of the demultiplexer is that the input data lines will go onto one of the destinations which is selected, and for all other destinations, the data lines will be all zeros, right? So I don't want to erase the contents of the other registers. Let's say if I want to write the data into the register R1, right? That should not lead to any change in the contents of the other 7 registers. So how do we ensure that? I'm just trying to see whether any of you will give the answer. Yeah, clock signal only for that register. Good. So how do we do that? Yeah. How do we make sure that the clock signal only for that register will be active? Okay. So again, you have to use one more circuit, which I think all of you are familiar with, right? A 3 to 8 line decoder, right? Where input to this will be register address, and the outputs of this decoder will go to the corresponding C inputs, which I will indicate as C7, right? So basically, the C input of the register 0 will be called as the C0, right? Register input, I mean the control input for the register 1 will be called as C1, right? And control input for the register R7 will be called as C7, right? And what does the 3 to 8 decoder do? Depending on the register address that we give as input to that, only one of the output lines will be active. I mean, all of you are familiar with that now. So if I give the register address as C0, only C0 will be active, so that will be set to 1, and all other outputs of the decoder will be 0. So basically, we control the clock signal for the registers from the output of the decoder, and only the selected registers control line will be made active, and for all of the registers, the control lines will be inactive. So the write port here will be enclosing all of this logic, right? That includes a demultiplexer as well as a decoder. Okay, and now I'm going to ask a question. Can we have more than one write port? Assuming that we'll write into only two different registers at the same point of time, right? Is it possible to have a regist file with the two write ports? That is, can I perform the write operation into two different registers simultaneously? Yeah, I just want you to think about it. Yeah, any answers? Yeah, if I want to have write operations to two different registers simultaneously to be done, is it possible to have simply two write ports? That's what you've done for the read operations, right? You've seen that it's just a duplication of the logic for each of the ports, right? And to have multiple read ports. So the question that I'm asking is it possible to have multiple write ports by simply duplicating the logic that we have for the write port? No. Okay, good. Why is that no? So there'll be outputs from multiple demultiplexers that have to be connected to the data lines of the register, right? So again, one has to use a multiplexer there, and then depending on which port is being involved in the write operation for that, you have to pass on only the data lines from that multiplexer, from that demultiplexer to the input lines of flip-flop. And similarly, one has to control lines also have to be selected, either coming from the port 0 or port 1 or port 2, right? So one requires additional logic of maybe more multiplexers, right? In order to do that. So in principle, it's possible to do that, but it will increase the complexity of the logic. It's not enough if you just duplicate the logic that's there in the write ports, right? To have multiple write ports, one has to have at least multiplexers before each of the registers. There will be two multiplexers, one multiplexers for data lines and other multiplexer for the control lines. Okay, and those multiplexers will be selected depending on which port is currently involved in performing the write operation onto that register. Okay, and if I want to have multiple write ports, right, that will only increase the complexity of the multiplexer logic that's required before each of the registers. Okay, and typically, as we'll be seeing later, right, we don't really need to perform multiple write operations simultaneously in the execution of the instructions in the processor, right? So typically, what is used in the register files that are available on the processor are the register files with multiple read ports and one write port, using which we can perform the necessary operations in an adequate manner. Okay, so let me just close the discussion here by having the generic structure of the register file. Okay, so typically there can be register files, register file where there are M registers, and each of these registers is n bit registers. All right, and there can be multiple ports for performing the read operation. So I'll indicate that by read port RP and read port 2, and typically there will be single write port. So this will have the register address 1, and this will be the data 1, and this will be the register address 2, data 2, right? And here it will be register address 3, and here it will be data 3, right? Actually, data 3 will be nothing but the data in of register file. Okay, and what will be the sizes of each of these inputs and outputs? So all the data lines will be n bits, right? And this will be some k bits, right? Where k is log m to the base 2, right? Because you need to select one of the m registers for the read or write operation, right? And typically this m will be a power of 2, right? So the k will be an integer number. So in addition to this, there will be read and write control signals. Okay. So for each of the read ports, there will be a read control signal, and for each of the write ports, there will be a write control signal. And because we have only one write port here, we have only a single control signal. Sorry, I think. Okay. So the typical structure of the register file that's used in the process nowadays is either 32 registers or even 64 registers, and the n will be either 32 bits or 64 bits, depending on whether it is a 32-bit processor or the 64-bit processor. Okay, and the number of read ports will be typically 2, and the number of write ports is 1, right? And sometimes you may have process with the register files even more number of read ports, right? It all depends on how many operands that you want to simultaneously get from the register file. As we'll be seeing later, the contents of these registers will be the operands for the different arithmetic and logic operations in the given program. And depending on how many such register operands that one want to access simultaneously, there will be support to in the register file with so many number of read ports. Okay, yeah. Any questions about this? Okay. Before we close the discussion on this, I just want you to point to a couple of other types of registers that will be typically interested in the CPU, right? They have the specific functionality, right? One is what is called the instruction pointer, right? Or it's also called the program counter. As you might be familiar with, the instruction pointer or program counter will have the address of next instruction to be executed. So typically we are talking about the specification of the location in the main memory, which we'll be talking about briefly in the next class possibly, right? Where the next instruction to be executed is available. So one has to fetch the instruction from that memory location and then put in a register called the instruction register. We'll come back to that quickly, right? So basically the instruction pointer will have the address of the next instruction to be executed. And typically after you execute the current instruction, right, what is it we have to do? In the normal program execution, right, we'll be having a sequence of instructions and we'll be executing the instructions one after another in that sequence, unless there is a kind of a jump instruction or a branch instruction, right? So if there is no branch or jump instruction, then the next instruction will be available in the next location in the memory, right? So what has to be done? After we get the current instruction at the address that's specified in the instruction pointer, we have to increment this content of the instruction pointer, typically by 1, right? So that it will be pointing to the address of the next instruction that's available in the memory, right? So let's say if I'm executing the ith instruction, so the address of this ith instruction will be available in the instruction pointer or the program counter, right? After I perform the execution of this ith instruction, right, then this IP or PC should have the address of I plus 1th instruction, right? So now it's not enough if I just have a register where this address of the ith instruction can be available. I should also be having a mechanism to increment the contents of this register, right? So that's where basically this instruction pointer or program counter is different from a simple register like what you have seen earlier, right? So this should have the logic to increment the content of the program counter by 1, right, whenever you have to fetch the next instruction. And the similar thing happens in another entity, which will be calling it as the stack pointer. I'm sure all of you are familiar with what is called a stack that's used in the execution of the program. And I think you might have studied with data structures course, right? So typically the stack will be used for many functionalities, right? It will be used to store the return addresses of the functions, right? And whenever you want to store the arguments that are passed to the functions in the stack, right, then we need to access the contents of the stack to get those arguments. Or when we store the result of the function, right, then we have to put the value that's written by the function onto the stack, right? And all of you must be familiar with the two operations that is typically carried out on a stack. One is what is called the push operation and the pop operation. So this stack pointer will refer to the address of the top of the stack, and whenever you do the push operation and pop operation, you have to modify the contents of this stack pointer. So typically we have to perform the increment operation or the decrement operation on the contents of the stack pointer. Okay, so in both these cases, that is both instruction pointer and the stack pointer, right, in addition to storing some content in the registers here, right, there should be a mechanism to support the increment operation as required in the program counter and increment or decrement operation in the stack pointer. So typically one can use a counter circuit that we have seen earlier, right, but it will not be exactly the same as the binary some n-bit counter, right, because what you need here is the operations like only incrementing and decrementing. So one can build the logic that's required to perform this increment or the decrement operation along with storing the contents of the instruction pointer or the stack pointer, right? And other functionality that's supported is either decrementing the contents of stack pointer or the incrementing stack pointer contents, or only increment operation in the instruction pointer. Typically, we don't perform the decrement operation in the instruction pointer, right? And so this will be a different type of registers, right? Where in addition to having the mechanism to write something into that register or read the content of the register, right? They should support to perform the decrement or the increment operations, right, on the contents of the register. Okay. So like this, there may be a few other registers, right, which will be typically available in a central processing unit or the CPU, right, which will be required in order to support the execution of the programs in the computer system. I just wanted to make a note of that, right? Maybe I'll stop at this point. Are there any questions? Okay. So tomorrow we'll just see briefly the extension of this to what is called a memory unit in a computer system, right? Where also will be performing the read and write operations, but the amount of storage that we will talk about is much larger compared to what we normally deal with in the register file. And it will be difficult to extend the same kind of a structure to a memory unit because, as all of you know, the memory unit is typically few gigabytes nowadays, right? So having multiplexers and demultiplexers that can support such large size memory unit read and write operations is not going to be practical, right? So we'll briefly discuss how a typical memory unit can be built, right, on the similar lines of the register file, but with a less complex structure to support the read and write operations. Okay, yeah, we'll do that in the next class tomorrow. So we'll meet in the afternoon for the lab class at 3:30. Okay. Yeah. If there are no questions, maybe I'll stop at this point.